Hi, my name is Nikki, and today I'm going to be doing a book review on a book by an author named V.C Andrews. Her most popular book and her first book is called Flowers in the Attic, but this is not about that book. I do want to do a brief rundown if you don't know what the story is about. All of V.C Andrews' books involve incest, and I looked it up. And I really couldn't find anything to confirm, but I always wondered if V.C Andrews experienced that. Because, why are all of her books involving this topic? So I'm going to go into a brief synopsis of Flowers in the Attic to bring you up to speed. But this is actually the book that I want to talk about. It's called Garden of Shadows, and it's the prequel to Flowers in the Attic. So, Flowers in the Attic. So we start off with the family called the Dollengangers, and it's a beautiful middle-class family, blonde hair, cerulean blue eyes. This is actually the book that taught me that word, cerulean, and it's actually the only time I've ever heard that word. But anyway, beautiful blonde hair, blue eyes, middle income. The father is Christopher, the mother is Corinne. Then they have an older brother, Chris, an older sister, Kathy, and then two twins, Corey and Carrie. So they have the perfect family, right? Until the dad, Christopher, dies in a car crash, and the mother discovers that he doesn't have any life insurance and that they're actually quite a bit in debt. The mother, Corinne, wakes up her kids in the middle of the night and takes them on this crazy secret voyage to West Bubblefuck, Virginia, to this mega mansion that's in this whole maze through some cornfield or something like that. And she tells them, "This is my parents' house who disowned me years ago. Pops don't know about y'all. Mom does. So we're going to have to hide you in the attic until I can win my dad's heart back and get some shmoney." Now, we have to ask ourselves, what did Corinne do that was so bad that her father disowned her? I'll tell you, she diddled her uncle, and her kids were the result of incest. The grandma's pretty much like, y'all spawned to the devil, and my job is to keep you in line and God-fearing and abiding. And she does. I'm not going to get into the whole damn book, but those kids went through hell, especially Corey. The way the grandmother tortured those kids psychologically and had them trapped up in the attic made me hate that grandmother. I hated the grandmother. She really didn't have to do all that. And I don't even want to get started on the mother, Corinne, and all the stuff that she did, which was basically for some money and some penis at the end of the day. So, long story short, fucked up mom, fucked up grandmother, kids in attic, hell, right? Okay, so that's Flowers in the Attic. So after reading Flowers in the Attic, I always hated the grandmother. She was the villain of the story. And that's where Garden of Shadows comes in, because it's the story of the villain. I did an AI search on a villain's backstory, and here is what the results turned up. A villain's backstory often involves a tragic event or series of negative experiences that push them down a dark path, leading them to develop a warped sense of justice or a deep-seated desire for revenge, transforming them from a potentially ordinary person into a malicious antagonist. Key elements can include a traumatic childhood, betrayal by someone they trusted, or a significant loss that they seek to rectify through destructive means. Key points to consider when crafting a villain's backstory. A difficult childhood marked by neglect, abuse, or loss can leave deep psychological scars, shaping their worldview and driving them towards negativity. Loss of innocence. A pivotal moment where a character experiences a significant loss or betrayal, often at the hands of someone they consider trustworthy, can be a catalyst for their transformation into a villain. Unrealistic expectations. A character who is pushed too hard to achieve impossible standards, leading to frustration and a sense of failure, might turn into a destructive behavior to cope. Misunderstood genius. A highly intelligent individual who feels ostracized by society due to their unique abilities, potentially leading them to believe they are above the rules and justified in their actions. Power complex, a desire for control and dominance, stemming from a feeling of inadequacy or a need to compensate for past experiences, could manifest as villainous behavior. So, from this breakdown of what creates a villain, I want to point out that Garden of Shadows takes you down the long, dark journey of Olivia's life and the circumstances that led her to go from a shy, hopeful, innocent girl into a cruel, cold grandmother. And I'm not gonna lie, the stuff that Olivia went through, like the betrayal, like it is messy. It is messy, okay? Like she went through some ish. Like I can kind of understand why she turned into the villain. And like Real Housewives, all them baddies, they could never touch the Doppelgangers, I promise you. This book is messy. And so this brings me to the author, V.C. Andrews, because for a very long time, she remained an enigma to me. If you were to do a search for V.C. Andrews, you would find maybe one or two pictures, as she was a very private person. I read this book for the first time when I was like 10 years old, and we didn't have Google, we had Ask Jeeves. I couldn't find anything, any pictures of her. So the picture that I saw on the back of the book, I'm not going to lie, kind of creeped me out a little bit. Maybe you can see why. Seeing V.C. Andrews kind of made her books a little more creepy and cool for me. So doing research for this book review, I am so impressed with this woman. Let me tell you about the amazing and quiet life of V.C. Andrews. V.C. Andrews was born Cleo Virginia Andrews in Virginia, and the story goes that she switched the C and the V around in her name so that her moniker would be assumed as a man. And I think it worked because I wasn't sure if the author was a man or a woman. And what I find incredibly sad is that Flowers in the Attic came out in 1979, but she died in 1986. So she only had 7 years to enjoy her fame. As a teenager, V.C. Andrews suffered from a fall and she had subsequent surgeries, which ultimately left her confined to a wheelchair. That is why this beautiful and artistic powerhouse of a woman kind of scared me as a teenager, because what I perceived to be cold and rigid was actually just her having a small range of motion due to her disability. And I'm certain this is why V.C. Andrews was an intensely private person. And even though V.C. Andrews was confined to a wheelchair, that girl was a hustler, okay? I want to point that out. She was in a wheelchair and she took a 4-week correspondence course and became an artist. She made money from her wheelchair, so what excuse do you have? Speaking of hustling like V.C. Andrews, V.C. Andrews kicked out 7 books in 7 years, and she had breast cancer. She knew she had breast cancer. She was so invested in writing that she neglected her health, and she probably could have potentially lived a lot longer if she had addressed her health concerns, but she just wanted to finish these books. V.C. Andrews is essentially a martyr for her life-changing literature that has affected maybe hundreds of thousands of people over the last 5 decades. So the book we discussed today, Garden of Shadows, was started by V.C. Andrews, but she died before she could finish the book. So a ghostwriter named Andrew Niederman finished it. I'm not sure why they chose a man to write in this female voice. I don't know, but they did. Me personally, the books are still coming out, so somebody has to like them, but I don't do posthumous V.C. Andrews. I don't, it's just not the same. V.C. Andrews was very good at capturing the aching and confusing voice of her characters, and Mr. Niederman is just not V.C. Andrews. When I think about the story of V.C. Andrews, how she was confined to this wheelchair, she had all the components to become a villain. Instead, she became a literary hero and turned her characters into the villain and their victims into the vindicated. I totally suggest that you read The Garden of Shadows after you read Flowers in the Attic, and then follow it up with Petals on the Wind. Go meet the Dollengangers if you want to meet a family with some messy tea. And put the phone down and read a book.